Welcome to the Pictures of Lily podcast, Vintage Edition. I'm your host, Lily Moayeri. I have been a music journalist since 1992, and I interview a lot of music-related people. This podcast is about my experience behind the story and what my experience is doing the interviews, just to give you a snapshot of what it's like on the other side of the digital recorder. This is our second year since shifting to the Pictures of Lily podcast Vintage Edition, where I am sharing my experiences about specific interviews with the bonus of original audio from the artists in those interviews. These interviews pull from my 30-plus years of archives, many of which are recorded on cassette tape.
Pictures of Lily.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Pictures of Lily podcast Vintage Edition. This is Year 6, Episode 96. We publish monthly with a new episode posting on the second Wednesday of each month. You can find us on every platform by going to picturesoflily.com, where you can subscribe or follow us, and also connect to us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Pandora, and Amazon, although it's really best to listen to the podcast straight from the source at picturesoflily.com, as it is the highest quality audio and avoids copyright restrictions. This episode is on my first of many interviews with Moby from 1999. Here are a few snapshots of my initial experience interviewing Moby. The interview took place over the phone on April 21st, 1999, at the time of his massive crossover album Play, before it was a success. In fact, while we were doing this interview, Moby had no idea what was around the corner for him. And the day before, the Columbine High School shooting happened, which we talked about toward the end of the interview. Rewinding to the early 90s, Moby's club tracks, particularly Go and Next is the E, were the soundtracks of my nascent raver years. And they had a major role in shaping my taste in electronic music. To this day, when I hear the first bars of any of Moby's early 90s songs, I feel those exact same euphoric feelings. Entirely randomly, in 1994, Moby ended up living at my best friend Sally's house in London for a month. There's a picture of Sally and her daughter in Moby's first book, Porcelain. Even with all his formative impact on me, I didn't interview him until Play. I expected Moby to be awkward and weird, but he was engaging and intelligent and thoughtful. I enjoyed our interview immensely. As soon as the interview starts, you can tell that it's offbeat. I mean, we're talking about numbers.
But I've had good luck with numbers. Like the building I live in is 262 and the apartment's 505. And my phone number, 226-8300, I think is really I lucked out with that.
Why did they give you a number like that?
Just accident.
You know what?
Purely by accident.
Are you like a numbers person or a words person?
Well, I mean, when I took my SATs, my whatever.
Scholastic aptitude test.
Yeah. I did really well verbal and really terrible. You know, I just completely botched the math aspect of it.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that you're not a numbers person. It's how you think. It's not whether you can do sums. I think just because, I mean, those are problems where you have to know how to solve them, and if you haven't been taught, you can't make it up. But it's the way you approach your life, whether you approach it more logically and, you know, break it down to numbers, or just kind of go by feeling.
But isn't it? I think it's possible to do both.
Yeah, but you're always a little bit more one or the other. Because I'm a writer who's a numbers person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would be a lot better writer if I was more of a words person. Mm-hmm. But because I am a numbers person, my writing would lean towards being more dry.
Yeah, I mean, I find it certain generalizations can hold true, but there's that one, in some circumstances, I think I'm a numbers person. In some circumstances, I think I'm more, intuitive and emotional.
But music is just math anyway.
Yeah, people say that, but I don't believe it.
Do you think you know what it means, though?
What's that?
Do you think you know what that statement means?
Well, I understand it on an analytical level, but I just don't believe it. It doesn't, music never sounds like numbers to me.
Uh-huh.
It kind of mystifies me.
Well, I'm not really sure what people say when they mean that.
What's that?
I'm not sure what people say when they mean that. I just know what kind of vaguely it means to me. Because if you want to think of it more just in just technical terms, it's more like, learning the equipment, I suppose, and being able to like kind of follow a formula, which isn't very creative. So if they mean numbers that way, then you kind of don't want it to be numbers.
I think they mean it on a more scientific level, like, compression and rarefaction of the atmosphere.
Huh.
Something like that. I don't know, but it's a truism that I've heard before, and I don't know what it means. And it's just, as I said, it's not how I perceive music to be.
Right.
I see music as being quite nebulous and intangible, but still very powerful.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that.
Then we started talking about his faith and segged into a number of other topics which had pretty much nothing to do with his music.
It's a very strange issue,
right.
Because, and the only way I can describe my religious beliefs, actually, let me turn off the stereo. I'm a little bit distracted. I'm just going to walk over the stereo. Okay, and I hope this doesn't sound too new agey.
Okay.
Or too wishy-washy.
Okay.
But my feeling is, I don't know human beings. Oops, I'm sorry. Can you hold on for a second?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hello?
Still me.
Calling on the other line?
No.
I think that the human ability to perceive anything on anything even approaching an objective level is very compromised.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that, our ability to perceive things is so flawed that we really can't say anything about the objective nature of things. So, just for starters, we're only around for, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years in a universe that's, as far as we know, 15 billion years old. So, and we're teeny, we're so small, and we only have a few senses, and the world is so vast and so intricate and so old, and so we can't perceive it on any meaningful level, really, except, we can perceive things on a very subjective level. At least that's my perception of it. So how that informs my religious beliefs is, it would just seem absurd to try to say anything meaningful about God. If God made the universe, and the universe is 15 billion years old, who am I, being 33 years old, to say anything meaningful about who or what God is? But having said that, I love Christ and I love the teachings of Christ. But it's on a very subjective, naive. It's from a very subjective, naive perspective. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do I sound like a new age crackpot?
No, because if it was anything more than that, if it was something like more calculated, that would make you sound like a new age crackpot. It's just because it's just so pure, and so because you just believe it, that it sounds more real.
Yeah, it's just weird. Like I love what I know about Christ, and I love the fact that Christ stresses, in the teachings of Christ, he stresses humility and selflessness and compassion and forgiveness and tolerance and non-judgmentalism. And I think those are all really, really wonderful virtues,
mm-hmm.
Wonderful things to stress. And so I can't consider, I think to call yourself a Christian means that you have to think that you figured everything out. And I don't think I figured anything out. I can't really call myself a Christian because I just don't, it just seems too presumptuous.
Hmm.
To say that I've figured out the nature of the universe and here it is. I haven't. I do not have, as far as I know, I don't have the ability to figure out the nature of the universe. I can't even figure out the nature of my intestinal system. It's like, so I don't know anything on an objective level, but subjectively, I love the teachings of Christ.
So, how do you think that ties in with what you said about technology?
I don't. The strange thing is, regardless of what type of music I'm working on, I use the same equipment.
Right.
Even whether I'm making a techno record or a punk rock record or classical music or, whatever type of music is represented on this album, it's all made just by me in my studio with the same equipment.
Mm-hmm.
The album Animal Rights, sort of like the punk rock record, was made with the same equipment that I made Go and some of the earlier dance with. I'm not a technophobe at all.
Right.
Nor I'm not a technophiliac either.
I think maybe he was thinking that those other records were made with a different type of instrument, I guess.
No, they're all. I mean, I'm never too concerned with what goes into making a record. The only thing that concerns me is how it makes me feel when I listen to it. So if a record is made with a bunch of acoustic instruments or just a bunch of samples or whatever, I don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
Whether a record is comprised of virtuoso musicianship or just banging on a drum machine, it's irrelevant to me. The only thing that has relevance is how I feel about the music when it comes out of two speakers in my living room.
Yeah. So why did you change the kind of music you were making, though? Like, just because I can see what he was saying, because you could have had the kind of success that those guys had 2 years ago, pretty much, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And you did, at least on, not maybe on a mainstream level, but you did, I'm still living off Go and everything next to the...
And from my perspective, I never really changed, because I've been making music since I was 8 years old.
Right.
And my musical background's really weird and varied. So, I've never really chosen one type of music at the exclusion of anything else. So, like, even when I was known for making dance music, I was still making different types of music. It's just the label that I was signed to wouldn't let me release it.
I see.
When I made Go, I was still playing drums in a punk rock band. And I was still writing quiet classical music at home. I just didn't have a way to put it out.
Okay.
I mean, just, I guess, eclecticism, if that's what you want to call it, just seems like, my natural way of making music. And I don't think of it as eclectic. Like with this album, Play, I was doing an interview yesterday, and this guy was saying he thought it was such a wildly eclectic record. And I was like, my goodness, I don't think it's eclectic at all. I think it's really cohesive, and so I don't know.
Do you think he meant eclectic in the influences as opposed to the actual sound?
I think he actually meant the components of the record. Like some songs have guitars on them, some songs don't. Some songs have...
Yeah, but it still sits together nicely. It's not like it sounds like it should be on different albums.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. That's why I think maybe he meant, but you're saying you didn't mean that. Because, even you're saying that the influences are eclectic, but that doesn't mean that the result is as, scattered or...
Yeah. But I think that, in dealing with, popular music at the end of the 20th century, influences are inherently eclectic.
Yeah.
Rock music is informed by so many different cultural traditions.
Yeah.
And dance music, same thing. It's like there isn't, as far as I know, there isn't like a form of popular music that represents a cultural tradition that's been unchanged for the last 1,500 years.
Yeah.
So by definition, every type of popular Western music represents a sort of like cultural melting pot.
Yeah. So do you think the next record's going to be like a complete change again?
I have no idea.
But it's possible.
It's possible. Because part of, and here I know this is, I hope this doesn't sound like bad musician cliché, but I think I define success differently than other people might define success. I'm the most fortunate musician in the world. I live in New York and I own my own house and recording studio, and I have enough money to take my friends out to dinner. And I've been able to work with some of my heroes, and I've been able to make music that people care about and bring into their homes and interact with. And to me, that's a wonderful definition of success.
Yeah.
And I haven't sold millions of records, but well, who cares?
As long as you can still get to do what you want.
Yeah, I expected, when I started making records, my expectation was, to sell a few thousand records and DJ, and, that's all I really wanted. And I've achieved so much more, so I feel like, the most successful musician in the world.
Yeah.
Even though by, I guess, some conventional standards or definitions of success.
Rockstar definitions.
Yeah, it's like, I've sold enough records, so I can't complain.
Yeah.
But and it's interesting because I left Elektra about a year ago, and I spent the last year meeting people from different labels. And I was talking to one record label, a major label, And they really liked this record, and they said, but we want you to make a hit record so you can get it played on the radio 18 billion times a day and sell tons of records.
So this record was already done, you were shopping it around?
It was
Play was already
in the process
finished
of being done.
Okay.
And so there's this one major label, and they wanted me to have a hit single.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way major labels know how to sell records, is to have a hit single. And I started thinking about it, and I had this epiphany. I was looking at these pictures. It was a photo essay in the New York Times Magazine of entertainment moguls and celebrities in St. Bart's over New Year's. And it was like, like Russell Simmons and these guys smoking cigars and women they're all hanging out in yachts and whatever. And I was like, well, if this is what selling millions of records gets me, I really don't want to sell millions of records.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to St. Bart's for New Year's. I don't want to hang out at Moomba. I don't want to do things like that. I want to hang out with my friends.
Yeah.
I want to, play with dogs and, hang out with nice people and do simple things.
Yeah. You could still do that, though.
What's that?
You could still do that.
Yeah, but not in St. Bart's.
No, what I mean is you could still do that and not have to go to St. Bart's.
Yeah, but it was kind of liberating to realize that because, that way, I have no problem. If I sell millions of records, terrific, fine. If I don't sell millions of records, that's fine too. If I make a song that gets played on the radio, fine. If I make songs that don't get played on the radio, that's fine too. It's just liberating.
To know that you don't have to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me,
it gives you more creative freedom as well.
Yeah, it gives you a great deal of creative freedom, and it gives you the ability to make creative decisions for the right reasons. And, because they were pushing me in the direction of trying to make some decisions, like doing collaborations and stuff that were really based on marketing. And it made me feel dirty.
Right.
And, I'm comfortable having a sort of flexible and fluid approach towards the creative process and trying different things. But I don't want to do things that are going to make me feel grimy.
Yeah. It's nice to have the choice not to have to do that.
Yeah, and it's I might feel differently if I had, kids I was trying to put through college, or if I really wanted to buy an 80-foot yacht or whatever. To me, the one nice thing about it could be the idea of reaching people and sort of making the world a different place, influencing the world in hopefully positive ways.
Right.
That might be nice. But I don't know. I don't see how having. I have a nice home here in New York. It's if I had, a home, like an $8 million penthouse somewhere, I don't see how that would necessarily improve the quality of my life.
Exactly.
Yeah, some of my friends try to talk me into buying nice suits. You've got the money, why don't you go out and buy some really expensive suits, and, women like them, and...
No, they don't.
I know. But I was like, well, if I had a nice suit, I'd worry about it.
Yeah.
Whereas if I wear clothes that I buy at the thrift shop, if I lose them, who cares? If they get ripped, who cares?
Yeah.
Whereas if you have, first of all, I find a lot of new expensive clothes to be distasteful.
Right.
Maybe I'm a snob from Connecticut, but I see people in Armani suits and I just find it tacky. I look at, you see people in Moomba or whatever with, and they're too groomed and their suits are expensive and new, and I'm like, it just makes me.
You're just possessed with Moomba, aren't you? With the Moomba mentality.
I just have to use that as an example of.
I know, but you know how many times you've used it? It's so fascinating. I know, but that's great. 4 times in half an hour.
But it represents that whole.
I know exactly what you're saying.
I could say the Mercer Hotel.
No, just keep saying Moomba. I like that we keep going back to that.
Yeah.
It keeps a thread going.
Yeah.
With everything you're saying.
Yeah. It's sort of the touchstone or the paradigm of sleazy new clothes culture.
Yeah.
And men who have too much hair care products in their hair and are too clean shaven and are trying to have sex with 20-year-old models and
and they're all wearing the same dress, those models.
Yeah,
the black dress with the straps.
And it's just such a shame. I kind of almost feel like this Holden Caulfield approach towards these people. You see these 20-year-old models looking for I don't know what they're looking for, but they end up with sleazy guys with loafers and no socks and expensive suits. And I just want to say to them, why don't you guys all just get married, move to the country, and learn carpentry or something? And stop running around with these agendas.
The thing is, I don't know that that's their agenda so much as they think it should be.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, maybe I'm being extremely presumptuous and thinking I know better, but I can't see that pursuing the things they're pursuing is going to lead to happiness for them.
Then I actually asked him a music-related question, and I was able to ask him about potentially producing Guns N' Roses, clubs, and philosophy.
Different note, are you going to do all this stuff live?
Live?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try.
Is it going to be like a one-man show like before?
No, I've toured for the last 4 years. I've been with a band.
Okay.
So, when I make the records, I do everything by myself. But when I tour, I have a bass player and a drummer and a percussionist, and I play, keyboards and percussion.
When you played here last time in LA, were you with a band?
Yeah, the last time I played there was...
Like the Hollywood Athletic Club is what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was with the band.
Okay, I never saw anybody on stage besides you.
Really?
Yeah, because you just got all our attention so much.
Oh, no, there were 3 other guys up there playing drums.
Oh, I don't doubt that there were. I just never saw them. It was more like, you just had all the attention diverted towards yourself, like intentionally or unintentionally. It was just that was what was happening.
I do, as shy and retiring as I can be, I do kind of like being the center of attention.
Yeah.
If I didn't, I wouldn't make records and go on tour and make videos and all that.
So. I know you're going to be singing as well.
On the tour?
Well, you're singing on the record, right?
Yeah, on 5 different songs.
Okay, but are the only vocals you?
What's that?
All the vocals are just you, though, right?
No, there are 5 songs that are based around these old vocals that were recorded in the early 20th century.
Okay, and they're just sampled?
Yeah, which is Honey and Natural Blues and Find My Baby and Why Does My Heart Feel So Bad and Run On.
Okay.
And the vocals for those songs were recorded in the 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other songs that have vocals are me singing.
Okay.
Except for the last one, My Weakness, which is from a church service in Africa. The vocals.
So are you going to do those vocals live?
The ones that I sing, I'll do live.
Right.
The ones that, that involve the old samples, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think maybe I'll just probably have to rework them so they're not quite so vocal heavy.
Yeah. Which is weird because those are really the focus vocal songs.
Yeah, but I can remix them. So,
yeah, of course.
So it doesn't, so the vocals are more part of the track as opposed to being the focus of the track.
Yeah. What happened to you working with Axl Rose?
Well, I went out to LA twice and met with him, and he asked me to produce their next record.
Guns N' Roses?
Yeah.
Mm.
And we met, and we had a really nice rapport, and we had a nice time together, and he played me the music they were working on, and it was really nice. I liked it. But I don't see myself as a producer.
Oh.
I think of myself, I'm a musician. That's all I've done for 25 years. So, A, I'm not qualified to produce a Guns N' Roses record, and B, I like making my own records. I don't want to give up a year of my life to work on someone else's record.
Do you think it would have worked?
I don't know. Axl works really strangely.
Do you like his ideas?
He's very talented.
Okay.
And I like the music they're making, but they work very slowly. I'm really impatient. I like to work very quickly. So I think it might have been a tense working relationship as it progressed.
Who was in the band at the time?
At the time, it was Axl and Duff and a bunch of guys who had not been in the original band. It's hard to believe, but it's true.
Are you still going out a lot to clubs and dance events and things like that?
I go out a lot. Not so much to dance-oriented things. I mean, I like dance music, but mainly just like to parties and smaller events.
I think we're all kind of going towards that. Because I was going to ask you why you thought it changed, and it's like, I don't even know anybody who's going from the beginning to now.
I mean, New York is, all of the big dance places are really far away.
Okay.
They're all on the way west side, like a Tunnel and Twilo and all those.
Right.
And so far away, no one, only tourists go there.
Right. That's not far from where you live. That's like a $7 cab ride.
More than that, but it's just, it seems so far away.
Okay.
And you have to cross a lot of avenues to get there. And
okay, it's out of your area.
Yeah, I'm quite provincial, so like if I can't walk home from somewhere, I get like reverse claustrophobia.
Okay. So you're down at Wax a lot.
No.
And at the Mercer.
No. But I get kind of panicky. Like I went to see U2 a couple years ago, and they were at the Meadowlands in New Jersey.
Oh, God.
And I was sitting there, and I was kind of bored, even though I like U2, and I was like, if I was in New York, I would just go home.
Yeah.
But I couldn't. I was reliant on my people I was with to give me a ride, and I felt really panicky. Like, I can't walk home. There's only one way to get home from here, and that really makes me panicky. Like in New York, you can walk home, you can take the train, you can take a taxi. There's a variety of ways to get from one point to another.
Right.
But if you're in the suburbs, it's like there's only that car.
Yeah.
And I don't have a driver's license, so I'm always at the mercy of other people.
Do you know how to drive?
I used to have one, yeah.
Okay.
But it expired a long time ago. But I mean, personally, I get my dose of the sort of like the big dance events because I'll go out and DJ occasionally. Like this weekend, I was in Chicago DJing at this big place, and then Saturday I actually DJed a rave in Cleveland. There were 7,000 kids there.
Wow.
So I'm still exposed to it. I would never go
voluntarily for fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's like just a part of it. There again, it's that panicky claustrophobia thing of like going to a rave and it's far away, and the only way back is you have to get someone to give you a ride. And
yeah. So do you feel the same kind of energy coming off the people that you did before? Like 8 years ago? It's
different. I mean, back then it was brand new.
Yeah.
People were inventing it as they went along, and now it's it's like an established cult. The mores are really established, and it's not like people are making it up as they go along anymore. And it's still fun, and it's still exciting, it's still vibrant, but it doesn't have that
experimental kind of, we don't know what we're doing, it's kind of taking us with it.
That sort of free zone of innovation.
I think that's like the best explanation I've ever heard.
What's that?
What you just said about like what it was before and what it is now. What did you study in school?
I was a philosophy major.
Okay.
And I was a minor in photography, but I never graduated.
Why?
I dropped out and made music.
Okay. How far did you get?
I don't know, because I went to 2 different schools, and I went like 3 different times. Like I went full-time, then part-time, then full-time, then part-time. I guess I'd be a junior if I went back. So I'd probably need like another year and a half. I mean, what I'm hoping is that maybe at some point, if I get older and, continue to have some sort of career, maybe some university will like...
review one?
Yeah, like make me like an honor doctorate.
So you're just going to skip from being a junior to getting a PhD?
Yeah, that's what I want.
Who is your favorite philosopher?
Probably Wittgenstein.
Who?
Wittgenstein, Ludwig Wittgenstein.
Okay, what's his deal?
He wrote a book called the Tractatus Logico Philosophicus in the early 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he was Viennese.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the book, the gist of the book was saying that, this is sort of actually going back to what you were saying earlier, is that in order for philosophical discourse to be meaningful, the terms have to be completely clear with no ambiguity attached to them.
What was I saying earlier?
What's that?
What was I saying earlier?
But then he said that the only way that philosophical discourse can be meaningful is if it's numeric.
Ah.
He said the only language that can be clearly understood by everyone using it is mathematics.
He's right,
And then he went away for 10 years after writing this, and everyone, the sort of like the British, European philosophical institution said, wow, he's a genius, he's right. And he came back and said, no, I was wrong. He said that we can never aspire to anything beyond subjective understanding of things. And that's wonderful. That's what makes us human.
So which part of it are you more a fan of? Second half or the first half?
I think they're complementary.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that language is inherently meaningless, but it's quite meaningful because we think it's meaningful.
Right.
I feel the same way about language as I do about the millennium. Millennium doesn't mean anything.
Nothing.
What's 1,000 years on a planet that's a billion years old? So it has no meaning for me, except that it has meaning for other people. So, if we collectively deem something to be meaningful, then it's meaningful. And if we point to something and use the word tree, then the word tree has meaning, even though that, we're not actually describing anything on a meaningful level. And I think that's the only danger with language, is when people actually think that they're accurately describing something with it. And I think language is just, it's a convenient tool, and it's fun to use, and it makes for nice conversations, and it's fun, and it can be very helpful. But we can't confuse language with, true accurate descriptions of something.
So what are you going to do for the millennium?
Well, the irony there is that the millennium starts January 1st, 2001.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, January 1st, 2000.
It's just the end of this one.
It's the beginning of the last year of this millennium.
Right.
So,
So what are you going to do for this New Year's then?
I don't know, the usual, like, go out and beat up homeless people.
Okay. Like what you did last year.
Yeah, blow up federal buildings.
Okay.
Buy drugs for 12-year-olds.
How crazy is this shooting in Colorado yesterday, though?
Well, it's horrifying. But the wonderful irony of it.
Of what?
Is of the shooting.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm just dying to see what you're going to say.
Is that the NRA is having their yearly conference in Denver in 2 weeks.
Oh no, that's too good. You're right. That is wonderful irony.
Yep.
Oh my God.
I faked a letter. I sent a letter to the NRA yesterday.
You did?
I signed it R. Melville Hall, which I thought sounded very adult.
Official, yeah.
And I said that I lived in Darien, Connecticut, which is where I had lived.
Yeah.
And I said that I'm a responsible gun owner, and I've been using guns all my life.
Yeah.
And I said I find your institution to be utterly, repulsive and reprehensible.
Mm. And
I find that your sort of take no prisoners legislative approach to be, disgusting and irresponsible. And I said that, as an older gun owner, I would never consider joining your institution. And, yeah.
Do you have a gun?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I give lots of money to gun control organizations.
Okay.
But I just, I was pretending that I figured the best way to get to someone is
to say that you are one of them, but you're not.
Yeah, I'm one of them, and I find them repulsive.
Yeah. Did you do that after you saw all that business?
Yeah, I got so, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing, but when I went out last night, somebody was just reenacted what happened, and I just told her to stop because I just couldn't stand it anymore.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's a big difference. If these kids had come into the school with sticks, no one would have died.
Yeah.
Maybe someone would have died. Maybe one person would have died. But it would have just been a nothing deal, and it never would have gotten reported, and it wouldn't have been a tragedy. But because it was guns, people die, and as a result, lots of families are waking up without their children. And that is bad. That's awful. And, it's just so clear. It should not be legal for individuals to own guns. And it's just from my perspective, it's just so glaringly obvious.
Yeah.
And I like guns. I think they're kind of sexy and they're fun, but they're just too dangerous.
Why are they sexy?
I don't know, because there's power. It's just like this little thing, and it's so powerful. I like powerful things. I love, like fast motorboats and guns and stuff like that. I'm not obsessed with it.
And that's where it ended. It was wild for me to hear the pre-multi-million selling Moby in this interview. It's a time that can never be recaptured except vicariously through this episode, I suppose. Moby and I became friends after this interview and have spent a lot of time together over the years. And I have interviewed him countless times. He is still funny and engaging as he was this first time. And he never forgets that we have a lot of history together, which is not always the case with musicians of his level of fame and success. You can hear more about that in episode 13 of the Pictures of Lily podcast, Classic Edition, where I talk about my years of experiences with Moby. I will link that episode in this episode's notes. And I will also link some of the articles I have written about him that are readable online. I am close to unearthing the print version of my 1999 interview with Moby, which I will include in the paid tier of the Pictures of Lily newsletter. The Pictures of Lily newsletter goes out every couple of weeks, and you can subscribe to it for free. For my paid subscribers, I am posting bonus newsletters that include print-only interviews from my 33-year archive, including classic ones from the 90s, with The Cure, Oasis, The Verve, Blur, Pulp, Supergrass, Portishead, Erasure, Electronic, Suede, Daft Punk, Massive Attack, Air, Black Grape, Tricky, Uncle with DJ Shadow, Underworld, and more to come. For founding members, there are additional interviews with Noel Gallagher, Richard Ashcroft, Damon Albarn, Jarvis Cocker, The Chemical Brothers, Massive Attack, Erasure, Primal Scream, more Daft Punk, more Uncle, and Talvin Singh and Beth Orton. I will link the Pictures of Lily newsletter in this podcast if you'd like to subscribe to it for free. Any paid subscriptions to the Pictures of Lily newsletter go straight to supporting the production of this always free podcast. From myself and my co-producer, director, editor, Lawrence Schroeder, thanks for listening. And if you have a chance to subscribe or follow the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, please do so, and please rate and review. You can connect to us on picturesoflily.com, and from there you can choose your preferred podcast platform, or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or Pandora or Amazon. You can also find the playlist for the podcast episodes on Spotify and YouTube. Thanks for listening.
Pictures of Lilith.